you are all about health and wellness, right? Mostly about taking care of yourself. And you have something that you promoted tremendously because something happened to you that made you take a look at your life and go, whoa, this is insane.
Yeah.
What was it that happened exactly?
Oh, well, my startup failed, but it wasn't just
We
that.
are going to today, yes.
Wait, say it one more time.
As many will be in the next months to come.
Yeah, which it's such a crazy time, and it's scary, and fear is a big part of entrepreneurship in general, because uncertainty is a big part of entrepreneurship, and now we're all dealing with that in this new way. Entrepreneurs, more so than they ever have. But yeah, that's I started my startup when I was doing my MBA at MIT, and when I was at MIT, it was exhilarating, of course, and it felt great. And then I left Sloan and we did an accelerator, and we raised, $500,000, and it felt like, oh my God, this is happening. This is just what I wanted,
I won the lottery.
I mean, right. When you raise money and then you get that check, it's like, I can't believe someone believed in me this much. Cool. But then, oh my God, that incredible pressure that you not only want to fulfill your own potential that you feel like you have, and the startup's potential, and then you have the pressure of, working to fulfill the potential that the investors, have placed on you.
And do you think that women feel differently about that check than men do? Because, all the women I speak to, they feel this insane responsibility to those investors. And there's a couple I have that have a very different attitude about it. And the truth is that swagger has actually made them a better entrepreneur.
Yeah, you mean the swagger that like, oh, I totally deserve this check.
I think it's more like, listen, this is what these people do for a living. They're betting on me. And if they lose it, they lose it. I don't plan on losing it. But if I lose it, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Well, right. That's what we call confidence. I mean, and that's what, but I think there's this whole spectrum, this whole line of, fake confidence to, no confidence. And I think entrepreneurs fall on the spectrum. Generally, we're toward the more confident side, or otherwise, why would we, be in this incredibly risky situation and think that we could do this thing? But I think that what I had, and I think what many entrepreneurs have, and I agree, many women feel like they have to put on this extra sort of armor of confidence, the fake it till you make it confidence, the sort of bravado and bluster, because deep down they really don't feel, that the imposter syndrome is so very real. And what I found with myself is, I remember vividly during my MBA and then afterwards, I don't often use the word mantra, but it's something that people use and people understand what it is. But, a phrase that you're repeating to yourself to remind yourself to kind of live with that in that moment. And I constantly was like, confidence, Kathleen, confidence. And the fact that I had to constantly do that meant that, no, I was not in a confident state. And sure enough, it led to depression. It led to massive anxiety. I had this migraine syndrome that I've had for now 10 years that just started getting worse and worse. My sort of physical health, really, became depleted. I ended up being diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which, my whole body felt
your body freaked from it. It was
totally
overwhelming stress. It was almost like a trauma.
Yeah, it really was. It was.
But what's interesting is that I think that, and I've always said the importance of being authentic, right? Is that it is harder for women to be completely authentic in those rooms, because there is this added sense of, I need to prove myself to everyone in the room, and I need to prove myself for all those women that are coming behind me.
Yeah. And for me, there was a lot of, I need to prove myself to the people who said that this wasn't going to work or that I can't do this. There was a huge chip on my shoulder that I don't think I was fully willing to admit was there. But yeah, I had heard of, I forget who it was at this point, but there was somebody who made a list of like all those people who said that it wouldn't work. And they made a list of the people, and then, you know, they planned to call them once it worked. Right. And I thought, well, that's a great idea. That's what I'll do, you know, but no, it didn't work because my startup eventually failed. And God, it was hard. Wow, that was so, and people said, you know, that the startup journey was hard. And I, you know, had known founders that had failed, and I just thought, you know, you just never think it's going to be you. You really don't.
Of course you don't think it's going to be you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But today, I think what's interesting, and I've been thinking a lot about this because of this pandemic, you know, what are things going to look like when this is over from a sociological perspective, and people, the importance of being in real life with other human beings. And so one of the things I've been thinking about, even though it in many ways it is tied to this taking care of yourself, right? There's so many people at home, unfortunately, that have been laid off, without jobs in the tech sector. I mean, I saw a hilarious Instagram of this guy who posted and said, here's what you do when your wife is working and you've been laid off. And she's at the computer and he's like in the background, you know, with all these hilarious outfits because he's nothing to do all day, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think back to New York City in the 1970s when it was so bad there. And I think, God, you know, are we going to go back there? And I don't think we are, because we're living in a different time with different, the jobs are there. It's just getting back into the job. But also, it is okay to feel like crap. And it's okay to be having anxiety, and it's okay to fail. You know, Billie Jean King says, you know, failure is feedback. It's like all these things that have happened that 10 years ago, you know, you'd be mortified to tell anyone that you are struggling.
Right. Oh, it's a wonderful thing that our culture has started to swing. Really, it's been the past, I would say, you know, 10 years, but 5 years in earnest, where, yeah, people had just became more and more open through social media, mostly about anxiety, about depression. And it's just fed on itself this opening up of this being okay. I mean, I'm a great example. I would never have talked about this. I mean, even with, you know, sort of like acquaintances, maybe my close friends, maybe, but I certainly wouldn't have talked to you about this. I mean, 5 years ago, heck no. I mean, I was putting on I've got everything together face, because I felt like if I didn't project that capability, that confidence, that nobody would invest in me, you know? And it's not like I didn't think I could pull it off. I did, you know, but I think now the opportunity we have, now that we've all seen each other's houses, you're seing right now, this was a guest room, which then we moved the bed out, put it in the basement, and now it's the office, right? And so there's nothing on the walls. Clearly, I need to put something back there. But you know, and if my partner hadn't been cool taking my baby for a walk right now, we would see my baby maybe during this. So we're seeing each other in these new ways, and I think
very intimate settings that are also very emotional.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. So the idea of vulnerability, emotion, the fact that we actually have lives, that maybe the idea of work as life doesn't have to be the paradigm anymore. I think that's going to contribute to this movement that we've had towards, you know, more openness and more transparency about sort of our human needs. And that's what I'm trying to do in my work I mean, I could never have imagined that now something like this would have kind of plopped into all of our laps. You know, I was for the past 2 years, have been working with entrepreneurs exclusively, helping them find ways to work through the stress instead of fight the stress or ignore the stress.
Because it eventually comes to get you.
Oh yeah, because oh my gosh, one of my pet. Say it again.
I was going to absolutely. It eventually comes back to get you.
Yeah. Yeah. The idea of like, oh my God, whenever anybody says like stress reduction, I'm like, I don't want to reduce my stress, right? Because the way that we define stress usually is we think of it as synonymous with stressors, right? Like, I don't want to stop working hard. But I want the effects of stress in my body to be lessened, of course. So that's what entrepreneurs, I think, resonates with entrepreneurs, is this idea that you don't have to take breaks all the time. You don't have to stop working hard. You don't have to, lessen your passion, but instead have some philosophies and some tools to literally go through the fire so you get on the other side faster, So it's about going through those individual stressors and not letting them compound into chronic stress, which, ends up in physical ailments like what I experienced and what many entrepreneurs, including men who might not admit it, but some do now.
Oh, for sure. I mean, listen, there is this, many entrepreneurs, most of them, particularly the ones that continue trying and trying and trying again until they figure it out, they couldn't be anything else. And like, of all the women I've interviewed over, the last decade plus,
yeah,
most of them who have started their own businesses, someone in their family is an entrepreneur. And so, that they have these expectations of what they're supposed to look like, but a lot of the things that you bring to the reason you can be an entrepreneur and you can think that you can like walk through walls started from the time you were a child. And I can fix everything, or I never can work with anyone. I mean, whatever all those things are, those have to do with your makeup, your emotional makeup, that allows you to sort of plow forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. There's a lot of our pasts come, I mean, all of us, this happens in life, but I think entrepreneurs, the expectations based on past experience are just wild. And the amount of, walls we put up that then come out in the most stressful situations we experience, entrepreneurship being one of them. Those really need to be dealt with as they come out. And we have to question our assumptions, basically, constantly, really, to make sure that we're looking at the situation as it is right now, instead of the situation plus all of those expectations from the past. And I think all of us are kind of being forced to do that right now. In fact, living in this totally new way, which in some ways is exciting, right? It's an opportunity to...
Amazing opportunity and to think things. But on the other hand, I think many entrepreneurs are afraid to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, you have an entrepreneur who's running a company, and the reality is they got it to a point, but they're frustrated because they can't get it any bigger, because they're providing the role of CEO, CMO, COO. And even though they hire these people, they aren't letting them be them. They're not giving them these long leashes so that they can sit at another level and overlook things and be able to breathe and have a life of their own on top of that.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think also I was talking to an entrepreneur recently who is kind of having the opposite problem, though, because I think a lot of young entrepreneurs are taught, they're taught to delegate, they're taught to collaborate. Particularly at MIT, we were very much taught that, the co-founder relationship, having co-founders is incredibly important. You're going to be more successful if you're a co-founder instead of a single founder, right? Now there's new data. Exactly. Now that, the data is coming out that maybe says the opposite, in fact, but we'll see. But I think that, so I think there's this wonderful trend towards teamwork. But now there's this kind of, well, I don't want to step on your toes, you know, with your teammates, such that there are these like silos. And then when one person, you know, isn't available, maybe there's, you know, there's something with this pandemic, there's an issue, there's other priorities, then you end up with a hole in the team, you know? So I think we need some kind of happy medium where people are honestly just being open with each other about what's happening now instead of what they committed to exactly, you know, before.
Completely. I mean, I've said to plenty of founders is don't ignore that elephant in the room. You have to let everyone know we are in a pandemic. This is terrible. I hope we're going to survive this. Here's how we're going to work. Many have had to cut, you know, 25, 30%, some 80% of people in the company, you know, and had to shift gears in terms of what their company is because it's not necessarily relevant to where we're going. And, you know, these are all super hard decisions to execute on and just gut wrenching. But on the other hand, you have to be able to be transparent and honest constantly as a manager, because when you do that, and the ones that I know that do, when they let all those people go, they were as upset as the person that was letting them go.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were always honest. They created good relationships. They didn't create this wall of, you know, I do it, this is how it's got to be. And I think that is, we're going to see more of this going forward. And we're going to see more that people aren't going to have to commute across the country all the time, that we can do these kind of Zooms, that business travel will quasi seem to cease to exist in some respects, which is a great thing. And I think what it's great for is forcing entrepreneurs to have a social life, to have a personal life. And it's something that many of them, you know, particularly women who have spent, you know, 6 or 7 years building a company and then it doesn't exist. And they just lost, you know, 6 or 7 years of a life that they had no personal life. And that's very, very, very unhealthy.
Oh, yeah, entirely. I mean, I spent 2 years, I don't think I went to one dinner with a friend for 2 years. I mean, because I literally thought that if I did that, well, I mean, in the beginning, it was like, if I did that, then I wasn't committed enough to my startup. I wasn't working hard enough. And then over time, that just becomes the norm. And you literally forget what it's like to have friends. Yeah. I remember, I mean, after my startup trail, you know, really failed, it was really done. I went out to Colorado and stayed with my sister for a couple of weeks. And she was like, what do you want to do? Do you want to, you know, go to a concert? Do you want to like go rock climbing? And I was like, I don't know, I guess if that's what people do, you know, and we went to a rock climbing gym and I was like, what is this? But I felt like I was on Mars, you know, it just felt so different. And now that concept, I just never want that to happen to me again and any of the entrepreneurs I work with, because the thing is, I kept thinking that, oh, this is so typical of this entrepreneurial attitude that like, well, once I succeed, you know, then my life's going to be awesome. Right.
Which is absolutely a lie. I mean, it's just like bigger kids, bigger problems.
Right. Right. Well, and also like what's succeeding? Okay. Maybe it's a great exit, you know, maybe it's whatever you define that as, but okay, sure. That could be 7 years in the future or, you know, more. And in the meantime, you have to live for 7 years. You have to, and what a bummer to survive 7 years, you know, how much better to live your life with the stresses and with sort of the mundane stuff we have to do and with the joys. And I think that that's what we can all do during this pandemic. It's about living can I swear?
You can swear.
Great. Living the shit out of our lives as they are right now. You know, the really difficult stuff and all, because like we only have the one life to live. Let's live it, you know?
I'm with you. I mean, carpe diem, as well as finding happiness in other things besides your business. Mm-hmm. You know, if you don't have something to look forward or something in happiness, I do feel what you're talking about can apply to anything, right? You have people that are in unhappy relationships and they're like, oh, if we get married, it's going to get better. Oh, if we have a kid, that's what we need here. We need a child. That's going to help help us. And the reality is it's not going to help anything, right? You're just prolonging things. Or kids get out of school and they don't know where they are, so they're just going to go to graduate school. And you're just prolonging that time that you're going to have to sit down with yourself and figure out what path you want to take. Right. And, it's the same thing being an entrepreneur, which is at the beginning, you have all these different problems when you're starting out and finally finding that the company actually is sticky and people want to use it no matter what vertical you're in. And then you go to the next level and the next level. And then all of a sudden you've got a whole other slew of problems. And so there's always something. It's not like, people go to work at Google, which is a huge publicly traded company with tons of cash. And so they've all made it. They have other problems inside those companies.
Yeah.
So what's your advice to entrepreneurs as you take them through sort of this concept, which is finding time for yourself and failing is okay, and making sure that you are mentally healthy, because that will bleed into other parts of your life?
Right. Well, fundamentally, really it's two things. It's embracing the idea of being self-aware in this moment right now, the one we're in right now, and that provides possibility for the next moment. So the tools of that are many, actually, but some of the most efficient, thankfully now, have tons of research to back them up. So meditation and mindfulness, which back when I was doing my startup during my MBA, I heard about mindfulness and I just thought, well, what's the point? Like it's noticing your thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations in the moment, on purpose, without judgment, right? And I was like, okay, so then what?
And it works.
Well, and it works. Now there's, hundreds of studies to show that mindfulness is incredibly effective in many ways. Our physiology, meditation and mindfulness literally lengthen the telomeres, the little ends caps on our DNA. They increase gray matter. And then from a psychological standpoint, we make more creative decisions. We can focus better. We can better regulate our emotions. It's incredible. But yeah, at the time, I just thought that all sounds like a bunch of woo-woo bull.
Totally.
And I was like, I'm a hardcore entrepreneur. I don't need that stuff. And now I realized that, through, the long
coders are all like sitting there together for, 40 minutes, meditating, because, and it's almost like putting a Band-Aid on a scrape, and eventually you get a scab and you've regenerated your body. You're regenerating your mind and your thought process every day.
Yeah, fundamentally at its heart, meditation, there's so many forms and traditions of meditation, many of which go back thousands of years, right? But at its heart, really, it's just a very efficient way to train your brain. It's just setting up the neural pathways so that you're noticing what's happening in your mind and body, so that in everyday life, you can notice what's happening in your mind and body. So not only is meditating, it in itself usually feels calming, and that's a good thing, and it reduces cortisol, but also over the long term, and this is really what self-awareness is about, it's an everyday thing. So just like with the startup thing, where it's like, oh, if I just do this, then we'll succeed, and then I'll have millions of dollars and everything will be great and my life will be, and it's like, even if that happens, you still have to keep living life and you're still going to have problems.
Yes. And you still get up every morning by yourself. And I think self-awareness is a really great way to look at that. Think of a lot of founders are not self-aware. And it works. No. Until it doesn't.
Well, right, because something really difficult happens and it, activates our fight or flight response, and then we're in panic mode, right? And many of us, I think, have experienced that with the pandemic. I mean, that first week when everybody was, stay at home lockdown order, oh my God, the amount of just, webinars and new things that were available. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, I have to create content right now, and I felt incredibly overwhelmed. I imagine others did also. And in many ways it's wonderful. People were trying to do good. And I've been I think it's wonderful to see all of the good that people have been doing over the past month.
Absolutely.
But at the same
also
time,
a lot of entrepreneurs trying to reinvent their brand and how are we going to do this? And, I will say that I felt personally that the last 3 to 5 years, really the last 3 years, have become so amplified that we're all running at such an insane speed and jumping into anything as quickly as we can with super high valuations that make no sense, and just putting money into anything without really being scrappy about the capital that we're thinking about. And there was bound to have a change in the market. I always thought there would be some kind of recession or some kind of shift, not knowing what that would be. Certainly pandemic was not high on my list. But there is something about all of us being in our homes, some people you see, wow, that's how they live. Very interesting, and then others where you're like, okay, so I'm not commuting 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
That's a big change. I have all this time, or I'm home with these children. So I have to think about that. And just the being much more self-aware of what's happening here, because you're in this house, or you're in your apartment, or you're in wherever you are, and you can't just move.
Well, I was reading an article today, actually, in a newsletter that I enjoy, in addition to your daily blog, which I also read, which I totally want to talk about mindset if you want to talk about that. But this other one was talking about the bias we as humans have towards action. Some people kind of freeze in difficult situations. Others are just like, okay, yeah, let me fix this problem. And I think many people have done that partly because, okay, so now we're at home, and maybe people before who were going out to dinner every night with friends, or who were going to shows, or maybe they were working really late at work, and now they find themselves in this position to have all, this new kind of time at home. We're just uncomfortable with ourselves in that amount of time because we're used to the distraction.
Going.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it's really, I think this time is this is the opportunity of this time, is to get comfortable with ourselves, to be comfortable being bored, or just like staring out the window for a long time. Because what happens when you do that, you notice more about your body, about the stresses in your body. Maybe you notice, that you're holding a lot of stress in your back, and it doesn't have to be that way. Or, you notice, some worries that have been kind of like sitting there, and you won't let them bubble up. They bubble up, and it feels terrible. But I think what people assume is that they shouldn't feel terrible. And that's just not the human condition. Sometimes we feel terrible.
And there's nothing wrong with feeling terrible. It's like a kid crying. Crying is great for you. So what made me talk about mindfulness, is where's your mindset? Is a founder, company never made it, spent money, could never get it off the ground, never got fully funded. In many ways, she was trying to change an industry that wasn't ready to be changed. And so she emailed me, and and then she came back and said, here's where I'm at. What's your mindset? And I thought, wow, that's a really good one, because I've been in the middle of sort of changing what I'm doing. So I have had a lot of time recently to reflect. And, to the point where if I have one call, I think, oh my God, that's like upsetting my day here. Like I'm very in the moment, and it is, instead of doing 19 things at once, I'm doing one thing, one time. And that is all I'm focused on.
So good.
And it is, it like lowers everything. And And there's nothing wrong with failing, right? I think that that is something. I talked to another founder who had raised hundreds of millions of dollars, did not work. And he said to me, you know, I'm like embarrassed, and I don't know if I can go return to that industry and blah, blah. And I was like, you don't understand. Your investors, that's what they do. They wrote it off. They thought it was going to work too. They've moved on to greener pastures. It's okay. Let it go.
So the letting it go thing, and this is what I experienced too. And I vividly remember a call with my mom, actually. She's very wise. And after Trill failed, you know, I really thought that I was the startup. I like genuinely, very ridiculously thought that I, as a human, was this startup and not separate from it. Right. And I didn't think that that was weird. I thought it was completely essential. And I remember my mother, you know, questioning that. And she was like, no, you're a human, you're Kathleen, you're not Trill, you're not that startup. And I was like, ugh. And it took me months to sort of, I mean, I think I got mad at her at the time, and then it took me months, maybe more than that, to really internalize. Oh wait, okay, yeah, I don't have to be what I'm doing. I could just be. I mean, what
That's
if we all
a part of you?
It's something that I engaged in. It's something that I love.
It became you. But it becomes all of you as this startup person. That it is, you know, it's like when you're a young mother and your kids are in school, it's like you're someone's mother, right? And then a lot of women start to think, oh my God, I've lost my sense of self. But it's the same things for founders. It's like all they are, it's just like live, breathe all the time, 24/7. And I gave a speech years ago for the Women's Entrepreneur Festival. I think it was the first or second year, and said, women, men too, men don't do it as much as women do, is like, you cannot build any more Oprahs and Marthas. You have to build businesses that don't have your name on it, because those businesses are separate. You can't sell them. You can't grow them separately from yourself when your name is there.
Yeah.
You know, it just changes the dynamic.
Yeah, well, and yet all of these founders are making their startups, no matter the name, themselves, and then it ends up in this incredible. I mean, when you're in the startup, you're you know, the ups and downs. It's like investors who, you know, if you got upset at every up and down in the market, I mean, you
lose your mind.
You would, right? And yet entrepreneurs do that, and the thing, again, it's this assumption that there aren't going to be downs, and there are always ups and downs in life, right? So right, we have to be, you know, here, and the up and down of the startup can happen, but we're still, you know, sitting there kind of rolling with it, like, you know, sitting on a horse. We're not the horse, we're riding the horse, and we're, you know, we're dealing with the ride. But I think
at one point, you park your horse at the saloon.
Exactly, and have a drink and talk to some friends.
Exactly. So what do you think people's mindset should be now? Is we have all these founders home that are flipping out, that some aren't getting funding, some people pulled back from funding, some are like, oh my God, my business is completely irrelevant. Others where their business is exploding and taking off. I mean, there's so many lessons that we're going to learn from this time. But we're all at home trying to figure it out.
Yeah. So the thing about the word mindset is hard for me, I'll be honest, because literally it has the word set in it, which implies that you know, set it and forget.
Fluid. So what's your mind fluidity right now?
Exactly. There we go. Yes, it's so much better. Right. Yeah, because, and I think mindset, right. You like put on a hat and then you're that, or you, and it's really like this label that you're sort of affixing to yourself at any given time. And I don't think that's necessary, because we as humans, we're designed to be flexible and adapt, and we can do that. So let's do that. So yeah, my advice is to to focus instead on what's happening right now, what's the information that I have, and then what am I going to do about it? So a lot of people would just say, focus on the next step, right? Instead of, way out in the future. I like to think of it like, a lot of people like to set goals. I don't really love goals because there's no sort of time associated with them.
And they're always moving.
And right. So instead, having a vision, right, like many founders, I mean, you have to have the vision or the mission, and that is it's your kind of guiding star, right? And the star is always in the future, and you're probably never going to get there, right? You're never really going to get to the star. Maybe someday.
You do.
What?
You do.
Right. So, but along the way, right, then that allows for the pivots and everything. And so I think making a really long-term vision and very short-term actions is a way to really stay reacting to what's available to be reacted to, instead of reacting all the time to everything,
What can you actually make an impact on today?
Yeah. It's so having, no medium-term plans, basically. Have a long-term one and very short-term ones, or even micro ones if you want to,
That's great advice. I mean, it is a very strange place where we find ourselves in. And there is no doubt there are going to be a lot of, companies that don't make it.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And there's others that we're going to explode, because who would have thought that, our world is going to need them more than ever, when they were struggling pre-pandemic. And the importance of taking care of yourself. Like every time a founder is closed around, I've been like, you need to go away for 5 days and just take care of yourself.
That's so good.
You come back as such a better person. And so I think that the importance of the short term is so key. And the long term right now should be, what is it going to look like when I get back into the world?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, as you do, right, I think that the entrepreneurial ecosystem, including investors, including entrepreneurs, everybody associated with this system we've created, needs to try to view those 5-day breaks as part of the business, right? I mean, I think like often
Absolutely. Somebody said, I don't have money for a coach. I was like, yes, you do.
Yeah, that's part of the business. Exactly.
That's part of the business. Someone I was supposed to talk to tonight said, they're both entrepreneurs, and he said she's having like a meltdown, exhaustion from this whole pandemic, and needs a day to just rest. And I was like, fantastic. Like some days you get up and you're great. Some days you get up and you're like, God, this sucks. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Everyone else is feeling the same thing that you're feeling.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think, right, this view that only working on the business is working on the business is just, it's always been wrong. And now it's very clear that it's wrong. And so even things also like most of, when I work with founders, most of their issues are with their co-founder, just the vast majority, right? Which I experience myself as well, just because, it's a marriage, right? And
it is
all the time. So, and I think that so many people think that they're, really having the sit downs with their team, or having that difficult conversation with a co-founder, it's extra and it shouldn't be there and it's annoying and you don't want to schedule it, and it's like, no, in fact, if you go ahead and you make those regular, if you and now, it has to look a little bit different because now it's over Zoom, but if you go ahead and deal with the problems as they come up and you make it a part of your business, then you're, you never get to that boiling point. And so, self-care, you never get to the boiling point. I mean, my goal is, so many venture capital firms are now offering mental health services sort of or money rather from mental health services as a part of sort of their investment or extra to their investment. Which
I got an email today from Ann Mel, who is a Reboot coach, and said, we're offering these free opportunities for people, half an hour coaching to help people through this time, which I thought was so fabulous.
Yeah, that's really great. Exactly. And so now it's starting to be available, and what it means is that as a culture, we can focus on, preventative help, so that we don't end up with those acute problems of, depression and anxiety and loneliness, right? In the really sort of chronic ways that they happen in entrepreneurship in the past. And so, and I think the side effect, the really cool side effect of having preventative sort of wellness services for people is that then in fact, it's going to help our businesses. I mean, I really genuinely believe, and I'm hoping this is what I'm working on over time, is to develop data that shows this, that actually concentrating on yourself in addition to your startup benefits your startup, benefits the bottom line, or benefits. Maybe we could actually do better than the 70% of startups fail. Well, now tons are failing, so that's really going to mess up.
I agree with you. I mean, if there's an issue you have to deal with, it's like even when our kids went, when kids growing up, I would say, don't go to bed angry.
Yeah.
If there's something, just say it. There's nothing wrong. So you work these issues out so you don't go to bed pissed at someone. That is a bad way to be. And I think it's the same thing as a founder, which is if you got a problem with someone, don't put it off. Have that honest and transparent conversation, because all relationships generate from yourself.
Mm-hmm.
No one can make you feel something, or you feel something. That feeling comes from you. And so if you can have these honest relationships with other people, then it allows a very different atmosphere of people being honest. If you come in one day and go, I'm having a really bad day today, and everyone's like, totally fine. I need some personal time to just chill today. And I think that the importance of being honest about your feelings and what's going through yourself versus trying to pretend that everything is hunky-dory 24/7 is a huge, huge mistake. And I actually believe full-heartedly that if you listen to even the investors around the table and can be honest with them about what's going on, you, in the end of the day, will do better because your relationships will be more solid.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think that the more honest you are too, then, any time that something does come up that is difficult, then everybody is basically practiced at not panicking, because it's the panic that creates the like, oh my God, well, we have to make this big change, right? And I mean, I think as a founder myself, many founders are, they're really worried that an investor is going to recommend something, or, they're not going to like pull out the cash because there are methods that.
Exactly. But people freak. Who said honesty is the best policy?
Actually, I don't know. That would be good to know.
Someone back in the olden days, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But, I think that is true now more than ever, right? Mm-hmm. Honesty with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
About how you're feeling, what the reality is of that you're facing, and figuring out how to get in touch with yourself so that you can breathe and in turn either hopefully grow your business. If not, that's okay too. But we're all going to hopefully be here for a long life. Yeah. And, your startup was a small part of your life, but actually gave you this gift to do what you're doing now.
Oh,
and so all the dots always connect.
Exactly. That's a wonderful thing, right? Afterwards, they always connect. When you're in the middle of it, it almost never feels like that. But the great thing is, we adults, we have the benefit of hindsight, knowing that, we had bad stuff happen to us, we had good stuff happen to us, and we're still here, and there are good things happening to us, all of us each day, even when terrible things are happening. And we can
Absolutely.
use that as an opportunity to focus on that and build on it, and know that there will be good things in the future, in addition to bad things. And that's okay. That's just the balance.
And that's life.
Right.
And that's
It's,
life.
yes.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me. I love what you're doing. I think it's such important work,
Thank you.
because for years, particularly in this industry of people starting up businesses, they have ignored themselves. And when you pay more attention to yourself, I think everything else gets better. And once you start doing it, you kind of realize like, oh, I had no idea. I had this huge wall up and now my wall's down, and like, I feel better and everyone around me feels better too.
Yeah. How fascinating, right?
How fascinating.
Yeah. The eyes become open and then, wow.
Bing.
I'm with you. And thank you. Yeah. Thank you also for all you're doing in this area, making it, you're writing every day, often talking about issues like this. And I think that's what we need to do to keep putting it out there so that the founders coming up see a different way of doing it,
Yeah, and don't feel so alone, 100%.
Exactly.
So let's hope this thing ends soon, although unless there's testing, it ain't ending any soon. But you know what? The medical community will get us there. I fully believe it.
Yeah, I'm glad there are definitely smart people working on it. And in the meantime, we can continue working on ourselves and helping each other.
Yes, and go home and meditate.
Exactly. And meditate.
And meditate. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna.
All right. Take care. All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.